Ah, that's Norma's daughter, Chioma, one woman said in Igbo, not bothering to keep her voice down. She's so tall and has the face of a man. Will anyone ever marry her, you think? The other woman responded, who knows? Maybe some old widower or nobody at all. It's a pity. Her mother must be worried. At her age, no proposals. And she even went to school too much. Men don't like women who are too educated, let alone one that looks like a man. Chioma was not like other girls in her village. At 25 years old, she was unusually tall, with strong muscles and even a few strands of beard on her chin. In the small community on the outskirts of Owerri, everyone noticed her appearance. People would whisper when she walked by, pointing at her height and the faint beard. Her presence was striking, and children sometimes stared or giggled. It made Chioma feel very alone. She lived in a beautiful part of Imo State, not far from the city of Owerri. The houses in her village were modern bungalows with colorful paint, not the straw huts of old stories. Flowers grew in front yards, and the roads were paved. But even in this pleasant environment, some villagers clung to old ideas. They believed that because Chioma looked different, something must be wrong with her. Neighbors often gossiped, saying things like, who will marry a woman as big and tall as a man? Or, have you seen the beard on her chin? It's not natural for a girl. These words hurt Chioma deeply. Growing up, Chioma learned to ignore the hurtful comments as best as she could. She was a kind girl, always willing to help her parents with chores and respectful to elders. But her peers did not treat her kindly. Other girls her age refused to be friends with her. They thought that being friends with Chioma might make them a target of teasing too. When groups of girls played or chatted after school, Chioma would often be left standing alone at a distance, pretending not to mind. Inside, she felt a heavy ache from the loneliness. Mama, why am I so different? Chioma asked her mother one evening after a particular hard day. She had been tough. Some boys had laughed at her in class, calling her Onyike, meaning strong person in Igbo, as if it were a bad thing. Chioma had kept quiet in class, but her heart had broken a little more each time they snickered at her. Now at home, she finally let her tears flow. Her mother, Norma, sat beside her on the porch of their house. The sun was setting over the palm trees and orange sky, and a gentle breeze blew. Chioma's mother wrapped an arm around her daughter's broad shoulders. My child, she said softly, everyone is different in one way or another. Some people are just not wise enough to see that beauty comes in many forms. She wiped Chioma's tears with the end of her headscarf. You have a good heart, and you are smart and strong. Those things matter more than looks. Chioma sniffled and leaned against her mother. But the other girls say I'm like a man. They don't want to be my friends. The boys, they make fun of me. She recalled how a group of boys in the village would follow her and sing a mocking song behind her back, calling her ugly giant. Each word had felt like a stone thrown at her. Norma's eyes were sad as she listened. She had seen how cruel people could be to her daughter. They are ignorant, Chioma, she said firmly. One day, you will prove them wrong. Just keep being yourself, work hard in school, and focus on your future. The world is bigger than this village, and there are people out there who will see you for who you truly are. Chioma nodded slowly. She loved school and learning because books never judged her. In books and in her dreams, she could be anything. She often imagined herself as a successful woman living in a city, surrounded by people who respected her skills and kindness. In those dreams, no one laughed at her appearance. That night, as Chioma lay on her bed under a ceiling fan humming softly, She made herself a promise. She promised to work very hard in school so she could leave the village someday and build a life where she was accepted. She had always been good with numbers and gadgets. In fact, one of her favorite things to do was to take apart old radio sets and try to fix them. Her father had brought home a second-hand computer when she was 15, and Choma spent hours figuring out how it worked. While other girls braided each other's hair or gossiped, Choma learned basic programming from library books and the slow internet at school. It fascinated her that with code, she could make the computer do things, create programs that solved problems. Not many people understood her interest in technology, but one teacher did. Mr. Obi, her maths and computer teacher at secondary school, noticed her talent. He often gave her extra books on software development and encouraged her curiosity. When Chioma felt down about the mocking, Mr. Obi would remind her, the world always needs brilliant minds, Chioma. Focus on developing your mind. One day, those who laugh at you will be left behind, wondering how they missed seeing your value. These words became a source of strength for Chioma. She began to pour all her energy into her education. She studied longer and harder than anyone else in her class. When others spent evenings at parties or wandering around the village, Chioma was at home or in the school library reading. Her mother sometimes worried she studied too much, but Chioma found comfort in it. Books and computers were her friends when human friends were few. Despite being lonely, Chioma did have one friend in the village, a young girl named Ada. Ada was a shy, gentle girl who lived next door. She was only 15, 10 years younger than Chioma, but she looked up to Chioma and never once made fun of her. In fact, Ada admired Chioma's strength. In the afternoons, Ada would sometimes come over with homework questions, and Chioma would help her understand math or science. Ada's companionship was a small bright spot in Chioma's life. Ada often told Chioma, I want to be smart and brave like you when I grow up. Such words warmed Chioma's heart and reminded her that she could be a role model to someone. Still, as Chioma grew older, the pressure from the community increased. By the time she graduated from secondary school at age 18 with top marks, some villagers were already whispering about marriage. In the community, many girls married in their late teens or early 20s. Suitors often came to ask families for their daughters' hands in marriage, but no suitor came for Chioma. She would watch quietly when matchmakers visited her cousins, or her classmates giggled about a boy who wanted to marry them. For Chioma, there were no such stories. One afternoon, Chioma overheard a conversation between two women at the market. They didn't realize she was nearby looking at vegetables. Ah, that's Norma's daughter, Chioma, one woman said in Igbo, not bothering to keep her voice down. She's so tall and has the face of a man. Will anyone ever marry her, you think? The other woman responded, who knows? Maybe some old widower or nobody at all. It's a pity. Her mother must be worried. At her age, no proposals. And she even went to school too much. Men don't like women who are too educated, let alone one that looks like a man. Tears stung Chioma's eyes, but she refused to let them see her cry. She stepped away and walked home with heavy footsteps. That day, she realized something. No matter what she did, some people would only see her differences and not her talent or kind heart. If she stayed in this environment, she might never escape their scorn. She needed to broaden her world, just as her mother and Mr. Obi had said. So when the time came to apply for university, Chioma aimed high. She got excellent scores on her exams and applied to the best technology university in the area, Federal University of Technology, Owerri, Futo. The day her acceptance letter arrived, Chioma was overjoyed. She was going to study computer science in a place where hopefully people cared more about knowledge and less about appearance. Her father, a quiet farmer, who rarely spoke about feelings, handed her the letter with a proud smile. Chioma, my daughter, you have made us proud, he said quietly. He was a man of few words, but Chioma saw his eyes glistening. Go and do well. Show everyone that you will be great. Nneoma, her mother, cooked Chioma's favorite meal that night to celebrate, jollof rice with fried plantains and fish stew. As they ate together, her mother said, this is the beginning of a new chapter, my dear. University will be different. Focus on your studies and don't worry about what anyone says about how you look. The right people will see your heart. Chioma nodded, feeling hopeful for the first time in a long while. She was ready to leave the constant mockery of the village behind and start anew. Arriving at the campus of Futo in Owerri was like stepping into another world for Chioma. The university was bustling with young people from all over Nigeria and even some from other countries. The campus had tall classroom buildings, modern laboratories filled with computers, and dormitories where students lived together. For once, Choma did not feel like the center of attention in a negative way. Everyone was busy with their own lives, rushing to class, debating in groups under the shady trees, or tapping away on laptops in the library. There were so many different faces and personalities around her. In this sea of diversity, Choma's appearance didn't stand out so sharply as it did back home. On her first day of class, she walked into the large lecture hall for introduction to computer science. She nervously found a seat near the front, clutching her notebook. A few students glanced away, but no one pointed or laughed. In fact, a girl next to her smiled politely and said, Hi, I'm Aisha. Is this seat taken? Choma managed a small smile. No, it's free. I'm Chioma. As most students filed in, Chioma realized something wonderful. They treated her normally. She felt almost invisible in the best way, not invisible as if she didn't matter, but free from stares and ridicule. The lecturer came in and started talking about algorithms and problem solving, and Chioma eagerly focused on the material. After class, Aisha walked with Chioma and chatted. Aisha was from a faraway city in northern Nigeria and spoke with a different accent. She talked about how strange it was to be far from home and how she hoped to make new friends in Owerri. Chioma listened, amazed at how open and friendly Aisha was with her. Aisha didn't seem bothered at all by Chioma's height or the slight shadow on her chin where she had shaved the few hairs that morning. Over the next few weeks, Chioma made a couple more friends in her courses. She became lab partners with a quiet boy named Emeka who was impressed by how quickly she understood programming concepts. In group projects, Chioma often emerged as a natural leader because she was hardworking and organized. For the first time, she experienced friendship and respect from peers. One evening, after a long day of lectures and labs, Chioma and Aisha sat outside their dormitory under a bright moon. They shared some snacks and talked about their dreams. Aisha mentioned she wanted to work for a big tech company in Lagos someday. She then asked, Chioma, what about you? What's your dream after uni? Chioma hesitated and then said, I want to start my own tech company here in Imo State. I have ideas for how to use software to help small businesses. She had been thinking of an idea to create a simple mobile app to help market women track their sales and inventory. Seeing her mother and other villagers struggle with keeping accounts manually inspired that idea. Aisha grinned. Wow, you want to start your own tech company? That's amazing. I'm sure you would do it, Shoma. You are the smartest in our class. Chioma blushed at the compliment, still not used to praise from people her own age. I have to try, she said softly. I want to help people like my parents. And maybe, she added in her thoughts but not out loud, maybe if I'm successful, people will finally look at me differently. University life was not without its challenges though. There were times when Chioma still felt pangs of insecurity about her looks. Once, a group of students were hanging out at a campus cafe. Chioma and Aisha sat at a nearby table. Choma overheard a snippet of conversation from behind her. A boy was telling a joke and said something like, she was almost as tall as that girl, Choma, in computer science, the one with muscles. Then a few laughs. Choma's heart dropped. So, some people still noticed and make jokes. She went quiet, stirring her drink. Aisha noticed and gently changed the subject to something else, sensing Choma's discomfort. Later that night, in their dorm room, Aisha said, You know, don't mind those silly boys. People make fun of what they don't understand. I think you are awesome the way you are. Choma gave her a grateful smile. Thanks, Aisha. Having a friend who accepted her meant a lot. With renewed determination, Choma continued to excel. In her third year of university, she built a project with Emeka and Aisha, a simple mobile application that could teach basic maths to children. They tested it in a local primary school and the children loved it. Their professor was very impressed and encouraged Choma to pursue her ideas in technology. Each success, small or big, added to Choma's confidence. She started believing in herself more, focusing less on her insecurity about her appearance. By the time Chioma graduated from FUTU with a first class degree in computer science, she had already laid some groundwork for her dream business. She had saved a little money from a part time job tutoring other students. She also had a detailed plan for a startup, a tech company that would create simple software solutions for local businesses. The idea was to help market traders and small shops modernize their record keeping and reach more customers through an app. Chioma believed that technology shouldn't just be for big companies in Lagos or abroad. It should help the ordinary people around her too. Graduation day was a proud moment. Choma's parents traveled from their village to attend the ceremony on the university campus in Owerri. Under the bright morning sun, wearing her black graduation gown and cap, Choma stood tall among her peers. When her name was called, she walked across the stage to receive her certificate as the top student in her class. As she shook the dean's hand, she had loud cheers from the crowd. Aisha and Emeka were clapping and whistling for her, and even some professors who knew her smiled proudly. In that moment, Choma felt a warmth in her chest. This was acceptance, not because her looks changed, but because she had proven her worth through hard work and skill. After the ceremony, she found her parents in the crowd. Her father actually lifted her up in a rare show of excitement, even though she was almost as tall as him. Chiomam, you have done well, he exclaimed, using the Igbo endowment for my Chioma. Her mother wiped happy tears and hugged her tight. I always knew you were destined for great things, Norma whispered. Around them, other families were taking photos and celebrating. Choma noticed some villagers from back home who had also come because another girl from the village graduated that day too. Those villagers looked at Choma in amazement, perhaps not expecting the mocked girl to be standing there receiving honors. She even overheard one say, Choma is the best student. Who would have thought? But there was no malice in their tone now, mostly surprise and perhaps admiration. Choma felt a surge of pride, not in a boastful way, but grateful that her dedication had changed how some people saw her. She caught Ada's eye. Her young friend had come along with her parents to see the ceremony, and Ada gave her a big thumbs up and an excited grin. Choma smiled back widely. That evening, as the sun set and the campus began to quiet down, Choma took a moment to herself. She walked to a peaceful spot under a flowering tree on campus where she had often sat and coded on her laptop. This time, she just sat without her computer, listening to the rustling leaves. She thought of the journey so far, from the lonely girl mocked in the village to a university graduate about to start a business venture. It felt like a dream, but it was real. She said a silent prayer of thanks and steeled herself for the next big step, building her own company. With her degree in hand and passion in heart, Choma decided to stay in Owerri to start her own tech company. She could have gone to a bigger city like Lagos or Abuja where tech businesses were booming, but Owerri was home in many ways. She wanted to prove that good things could come from her own state and help her local community. Plus, her family and the familiar environment gave her comfort. Chioma used most of her savings and a small loan from an uncle to rent a tiny office space in Owerri City. It wasn't much, just a small two-room office in a new commercial building near the road, one of the busiest streets of Owerri. The building had a bright yellow paint and a signboard listing the offices inside. Chalmers' new company was registered as Chi Solutions. She painted the name on the door herself in bold blue letters. On her first day in the office, Choma sat on a swivel chair at a second-hand desk she had bought, surrounded by the fresh smell of paint and new paper. She had one old desktop computer and her reliable laptop from school. It was a humble beginning, but it was hers. She took a deep breath and said out loud to herself, "This is it. Time to work hard and make this dream real." At first, it was a one-woman operation. Choma developed software by herself and went out to meet potential clients. It wasn't easy. Many small business owners in the area were not familiar with using software for their work. When she visited the open air market to talk to traders about her ideas for an app, some looked at her with suspicion or disinterest. They were used to doing things the old way, writing in notebooks or just keeping tallies in their head. Chioma faced a lot of rejection the early days of her startup. Some people even laughed at her proposals. One market woman selling clothes chuckled and said, "So, you want my phone to do what my notebook has done for years? No need, my daughter, or thank you." Others were kinder but still not convinced to try something new. It was frustrating for Chioma, but she didn't give up. Every evening, she would return to her small office, sometimes having made no sales or progress that day. She would sigh, allow herself to feel disappointed for a moment, and then push herself to think of new strategies. She refined her software to make it simpler. She added a feature to translate the interface into Igbo language so the local users would find it easier. She even offered a 1 month free trial for new users. Slowly, progress came. A small grocery shop owner was the first to seriously try Choma's system. His teenage son was tech savvy and helped set it up on their one computer. Within weeks, they noticed they were tracking their stock better and even attracting younger customers who liked that the shop was using an app to show when new products came in. That man told another friend at the market about Choma's solution. One afternoon, Choma returned to her office to find a note slipped under the door. It read, "Hello, I own a pharmacy and heard you can help with computerizing business records. Please come by my shop on Tetlow Road, Mr. Okeke." Choma jumped with excitement. Word of mouth was finally spreading. She visited Mr. Okeke's pharmacy the next day, demonstrating how her software could keep track of medicine inventory and alert when stocks were low. Mr. Okeke, an elderly man, was doubtful at first, but after Choma patiently showed him and his daughter how it worked, he nodded. "We can try it," he said. That evening, Choma danced around her little office. She had another client. To manage the increasing work, Choma hired a young intern, Ada, her neighbor's daughter, who by now had finished secondary school and moved to Owerri for her own studies. Ada had always looked up to Choma, so when Choma offered to teach her basic coding and let her help with support for clients, Ada was thrilled. Chi Solutions now had two employees, Choma and Ada. It was still small, but it was growing. Ada often marveled at Chioma's dedication. One night, as they were closing up the office, Ada said, "Chioma, you work so hard. Sometimes I think you hardly sleep." Chioma chuckled. "When you are building something of your own, it needs all the energy you have. But I do rest, don't worry." She didn't mention that sometimes she still had trouble sleeping. On tough days, The old voices of doubt and ridicule from her past echoed in her head. On those nights, she wondered if the villagers who mocked her might be right, that she was not meant to have happiness like others. But each time that happened, she reminded herself of how far she had come. Apart from the business, Chioma's personal life remained quiet. At 25, she had never been in a romantic relationship. In university, a couple of boys had shown mild interest, impressed by her intelligence perhaps, but Chioma always kept a distance. She was afraid it might be a joke or a trick, or that they would change their mind once they really looked at her. It was easier to guard her heart and focus on work. Her parents occasionally asked gently if she had met someone special, but she would simply smile and say she was too busy building her company. Her mother would sigh and say, "Just make sure you don't stay alone forever, my dear. You deserve happiness too." Choma knew her mother meant well. Deep down, Choma did yearn for companionship and love. Just like anyone else, she wanted someone to share her day with, someone who would see her as beautiful and make her laugh. But she doubted if any man like that existed for her. Little did Chioma know, Faith had plans for a chance meeting that would change her life. One sunny afternoon, Chioma realized she needed a new laptop for her expanding work. Her old desktop was too slow for some of the newer software tools she wanted to use. Ada suggested they check out a popular gadget shop in town that had good prices and a variety of electronics. The shop was called TechVile and was known as the best place to buy phones, laptops, and accessories in Owerri. Chioma and Ada took a taxi to the city center, where TechVile had its main showroom. The building was modern with glass windows showcasing the latest smartphones and laptops on display. As they entered, the cool air conditioning and bright lights made them feel they had stepped into a tech wonderland. Rows of devices lined the shelves. Ada excitedly went to look at smartphones while Choma headed towards the laptop section. She was examining a mid-range laptop, checking its specification when a friendly male voice spoke from behind her. "That one has a great processor for the price. Good choice." Chioma turned around to see a tall young man with a warm smile. He looked to be in his early 30s, well dressed in a crisp white shirt and navy trousers. He has kind eyes and carried himself with confidence. "Oh, thank you," Choma responded politely. She noticed he wore a staff tag around his neck. This tag read, "Steve, manager." Perhaps he worked here. Steve extended a hand. "Hello, I'm Steve. Let me know if you need any help with the laptops." Choma shook his head. "I'm Chioma. Nice to meet you. I'm looking for a laptop that can handle programming and maybe some design work, but it's too expensive." Steve nodded thoughtfully and gestured for her to follow. He showed her two different models, explaining the differences in simple terms. Choma was pleasantly surprised. Often, when she went to shops, salespeople either ignored her or tried to take advantage by suggesting overly expensive things. But Steve was attentive and respectful. He didn't stare at her oddly or act uncomfortable like some others did upon first meeting her. Instead, he focused on what she needed. Ada walked over with a new phone case in hand. "Choma, did you find something?" she asked, then smiled at Steve. "Yes, I think I might go with this one," Choma said, pointing to a laptop Steve had recommended. "It has everything I need." Steve grinned. "Great choice. We can get it set up for you now. Do you need any specific software installed? We offer that service free for some basic programs." Chioma was impressed. "Maybe just an antivirus and code editor if you have one." "Absolutely," Steve said. He called one of the other staff over to prepare the laptop for sale and install the software. While they waited, Steve struck up a conversation. "So, you do programming?" he asked. Chioma found herself relaxing. "Yes, I study computer science. I actually started a small tech business recently." Steve's eyes went up in interest. "Really? That's awesome. I'm always happy to meet people in tech around here. Most of my customers just want to buy phones and laptops for personal use. Not many mention having a tech business. He leaned lightly against the counter as they talked. Choma explained a bit about her startup and her goal to help local businesses with software solutions. Steve listened attentively, nodding and asking questions. Choma was used to people losing interest when she talked about tech, but Steve seemed genuinely engaged. It's admirable what you're trying to do, Steve commented. Many small businesses here struggle with modernizing. If you can bridge that gap, you are doing Imo State a great service. Choma felt a warm glow at his words. It was rare to get such encouragement, especially from someone she just met. She noticed how easy it was to talk to Steve. He didn't seem put off by her appearance or voice. Choma's voice was a bit deeper than average for a woman, another thing people used to remark on. He maintained friendly eye contact, and she even caught a spark of admiration in his eyes when she talked about her work. Their conversation flowed. She learned that Steve was not just the manager, but the owner of TechVile. He had started the business a few years ago, selling gadgets. Now, he had a few branches across Imo State and even considered expanding to other states. That explained his confidence and knowledge. He was a successful entrepreneur himself. Wow, Chioma said, impressed. You have done a lot with it. No wonder you knew so much about the laptops. Steve laughed lightly. Yes, technology has always been my passion. I actually studied electrical engineering, but I found my niche in selling and distributing devices. I realized there was a big market for genuine gadgets and good customer service, so I dove in. Ada, who had been quietly listening, piped up, Sir, your store is the best. We'll tell everyone about it. Steve smiled at the teenager. Thank you, and please call me Steve. I'm not that old. He joked with a wink. As the technician finished setting up the laptop, Steve excused himself to handle a call, but not before saying to Chioma, it was really nice talking with you. Let me give you my card. If you ever need any gadgets or even just want to discuss tech for business, feel free to reach out. He handed her a business card. It had his full name, Stephen Okoro, and contact information. Choma took it, feeling a slight flutter in her stomach, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate all your help. When he walked away, Ada nudged Choma playfully. He was really nice, and he definitely seemed to enjoy talking to you, she said with a grin. Choma chuckled and shook her head. He's just being friendly and doing good customer service, Ada. But even as she said that, she couldn't help but notice that her heart felt lighter. It was a pleasant interaction, more pleasant than any she had ever had with a man. They paid for the laptop, and as Choma and Ada left the store, Choma glanced back and saw Steve assisting another customer, but he looked up and gave her a small wave. She waved back, smiling. That evening, when Choma was back home after dropping Ada off, he found herself thinking about Steve. It had been a brief meeting, but his genuine respect and friendliness stood out to her. For the first time, she wondered with a tiny spark of hope, could there be people, men even, who might actually like her for who she was and not judge her appearance harshly? Shaking her head, Chioma tried to temper her thoughts. She barely knew him. After all, he was probably just a kind person in general. She busied herself with her new laptop, transferring files and continuing some work. Yet, as much as she tried to focus, her mind wandered back to Steve's easy smile and the way he said, what you are doing is admirable. A couple days later, Chioma needed to contact a supplier in Lagos about some software license. Her phone had an issue, and she remembered that Steve mentioned she could reach out for gadgets. Though a phone repair wasn't exactly a gadget purchase, she thought perhaps he could direct her to a good repair shop. She pulled out his card and decided to send a text message, thanking him again for his help and asking if he knew a reliable phone repair service in town. Her message read, Hello Steve, this is Choma from the other day at TechVile. Thank you again for your help with the laptop. Do you know a good place I can fix a smartphone screen? Mine cracked today, thanks. She hesitated a moment before sending, but then pressed send. A reply came within minutes. Hi, Chioma. Great to hear from you. Sorry about your phone. You can bring it to my shop. We actually do repairs too. I'll make sure they give you a discount. Are you free tomorrow, Steve? Chioma found herself smiling at the swift, helpful response. Tomorrow afternoon works. Thanks a lot, she replied. The next day, Choma returned to Techville with her cracked phone. Steve was at the store and greeted her cheerfully. He personally took her phone to their repair session in the back and promised it would be done in an hour or two. In the meantime, he invited Choma to his office upstairs, insisting that she wait in more comfortable space than the sales floor. His office was well organized, with shelves of books on technology and businesses. On the wall was a framed photograph of him receiving an award labeled Entrepreneur of the Year, Imo State. Choma was impressed. You've achieved so much, she noted, looking at the award. Steve waved his hand humbly. That was last year, a local business award. It sounds fancy, but it just means a lot of hard work. He offered her a cold drink, and they sat across from each other at his small meeting table. As they sipped on sodas, they talked, this time more freely, without the formality of a customer service encounter. Steve asked about how Tech Solutions was doing, and Choma candidly shared the struggles and small victories of her startup. She mentioned the challenge of convincing traditional businesses to use tech. Steve listened intently and then said, You know, I have contact with a lot of local business owners through my store. Maybe I could introduce you to some who might benefit from your software. It might help you get more clients. Choma was taken aback by the generous offer. That would be amazing. But are you sure? Why would you help me like that? Steve leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. Choma, I think what you are doing is great and more people should know about it. I also believe in supporting fellow entrepreneurs. I had mentors who helped me when I started. I would love to pay it forward. He paused, then added with a smile, Plus, I enjoy talking to you. It's not often I meet someone who shares a passion for technology and helping the community. Actually, I would like to learn more about what drives you. Chioma felt a slight blush. She couldn't recall the last time a man outside her family spoke to her with such respect and interest. They continued talking, and the conversation grew increasingly comfortable and warm. She told him a bit about her childhood, how she was often mocked, and how that felt her to want to achieve something meaningful. She found herself opening up about things she usually kept guarded. Steve didn't show pity or shock. Instead, he looked at her with admiration. People can be cruel when faced with someone different, he said softly. I'm sorry you went through that, but you are incredibly strong to have channeled that into your work and dreams. Just then, a staff member knocked and entered to return Choma's phone, now with a new screen. Good as new. Choma thanked him and examined the phone, pleased with the repair. As she prepared to leave, Steve walked her out. Don't forget about my offer, he said. I will set up a meeting with a few people I know who might need your software. Actually, there's a monthly business network event here in Owerri. Would you like to come as my guest? It's in a couple of weeks. You will meet many shop owners and business folks from around town. It could be good for making connections. Chama agreed eagerly. Opportunities like that could be the boost her business needed. Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate all this help. I really do. He smiled. It's my pleasure. Also, he seemed to hesitate for a second. Maybe after the event, we could have dinner or coffee sometime. I would love to continue our conversations outside of work talk. There it was, a hint of something more personal. Choma's heart skipped. Was he asking her on a date? It sounded like it, but he phrased it gently. She responded carefully. I would like that. Steve's grin widened. Great. I'll arrange the event tickets and we'll plan that coffee after. See you soon, Choma. As Choma left the store that day, the bright afternoon sun seemed to shine a little warmer than usual. For the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, someone saw her not as an oddity, but as an interesting and attractive person to spend time with. She felt cautious but hopeful. The world, which once seemed harsh and lonely, was opening up a little. Over the next couple of weeks, Choma and Steve kept in touch frequently. They exchanged text messages about both work and everyday life. Sometimes, Steve would ask how her day was going or send a funny meme about programming. Choma found herself laughing often at the messages. He had a way of brightening her mood, even on stressful days. The business network event arrived. It was held at a hotel in the heart of Owerri, a sleek multi-story building with a shiny glass windows. Chioma wore a smart tailored dress Ada had helped her pick. It was simple but elegant and made her feel confident. She arrived in a taxi and met Steve at the entrance. Steve looked handsome in a suit, and he immediately smiled and offered his arm in a polite gesture. Choma, you look great, he said. She shyly thanked him, not accustomed to such compliment. Inside the event hall, there were dozens of attendees chatting, exchanging business cards, and enjoying small chops, snacks from servers carrying trays. Steve introduced Choma to several people as a talented software entrepreneur. Each time, he spoke with pride in his voice about her achievements, as if she were a close colleague or friend he respected deeply. Choma felt a bit nervous, but Steve's support boosted her confidence. She explained her business to some shop owners, a few of whom showed interest and gave her their contacts to schedule a proper discussion later. One of the people she met was a woman who managed a chain of supermarkets. She said, if your software can help track sales across multiple shops easily, I'll be interested. Please come by my office next week. Another was a young man who ran a boutique. He admitted he had trouble keeping track of inventory and was excited by the idea of automating it. Choma collected many business cards that night and handed out her flyers. It was by far the best networking experience she had had, and it likely wouldn't have happened without Steve bringing her along. As the event wound down, a live band started playing music for guests to relax and mingle casually. A few people moved to a corner to dance lightly. Steve and Choma sat at a small table, sipping drinks after a job well done. Choma felt relieved and happy. She might gain new clients, which could mean she could hire more help and grow her company. Thank you, Steve, she said earnestly, looking at him amid the gentle glow of light and the hum of music. You really helped me tonight. I don't know how to repay you. Steve shook his head. You don't owe me anything. I'm glad to do it. I believe in you and your work. He paused, then added softly, and I'm really enjoying spending time with you. They shared a meaningful gaze for a moment. Choma felt her cheeks warm. In the background, the band started playing a popular love song. Some couples moved to dance. To Choma's surprise, Steve stood and offered his hand to her. Would you like to dance? He asked. Choma had never really danced with anyone before, not like this. She hesitated. I am not very good at dancing, she managed to say. Steve smiled gently. It's for fun. I'm not great either. We can be not great together. His playful tone eased her nerves. She placed her hand in his, and he led her to the area where others were swaying to the music. Steve placed one hand around her waist and held her hand with the other. Choma's heart was pounding, but she felt safe. The song was slow and sweet. They moved in small steps. Steve guided her, and she found that if she focused on him and the music, it came naturally. As they danced, Steve looked into her eyes and said quietly, I'm really glad I met you, Chioma. She looked down shyly for a second, then back at him. Me too, Steve. He twirled her gently and then settled back into a rhythm. Chioma almost couldn't believe this was real. Here she was, dancing with a wonderful man in a nice hotel in Owerri, a far cry from the lonely girl who used to cry in bed because others mocked her. It felt like the world had shifted, giving her a taste of happiness she once only dreamed of. After the dance, She helped her get a taxi home. Before she got into the car, he held her hand just a moment longer than a casual friend might and said, I will call you tomorrow. Chioma went home that night floating on air. Ada was waiting eagerly at the apartment. Chioma had moved into a small apartment in the city and Ada stayed with her occasionally when she had classes in town. Ada bombarded her with questions. How was it? Did you meet people? You danced? Tell me everything. Chioma laughed and recounted the evening to Ada as she changed out of her dress. Ada squealed with delight at all the little details, especially the dance. Chioma, this is like a storybook. I'm so happy for you. As Chioma settled into bed, she thought about how content she felt. But part of her also felt a shiver of fear. Everything was going well. She was not used to this kind of happiness and afraid it might suddenly be taken away. Life had taught her to be cautious of hope. In the following weeks, Steve and Chioma grew even closer. They met frequently, sometimes for business-related meetups, as Steve continued introducing her to contacts or advising her on her company, and sometimes just to enjoy each other's company. They had coffee at a local cafe where they talked for hours about everything, their childhoods, hopes, funny stories. Steve told her about how he started selling phones from a tiny store after uni and how it grew into tech vibe. Chioma told him about Ada and her family and even cautiously about some of the bullying she faced in the village. Steve listened with empathy, occasionally shaking his head at how people could be so mean. One evening, Steve invited Chioma to dinner at a nice restaurant in the city. It was a cozy place with soft music and candlelit tables. As they ate, Steve seemed a bit nervous, which was unusual for his normally confident demeanor. After the main course, he looked at her seriously and said, Choma, I have something to tell you. Choma felt her stomach flutter. Okay, she said, hoping it was something good, but that little fear crept in, wondering if something was wrong. Steve took a breath. I've really enjoyed these past weeks with you. You are an incredible woman, intelligent, kind, strong. I find myself thinking about you all the time. He reached across the table and gently held her hand. I care about you, Choma, more than just a friend. There, he had said it. Choma's heart raced. No man had ever spoken to her like this. It felt like a beautiful dream. But she also remembered every cruel word from her past, telling her she was unlovable. She looked at Steve, his eyes earnest and a bit vulnerable as he waited for her reaction. Steve, I care about you too, she said softly. I'm surprised. I'm not used to. Her voice faltered. Steve squeezed her hand. You don't have to say anything you are not ready to. I just wanted you to know how I feel. I would love for us to be more than friends, to see where it goes. But only if you want that too. Tears welled up in Choma's eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming emotion. I've never had someone, she swallowed, someone look at me the way you do. It might take me time to believe this is real. He moved to sit next to her, not caring if other diners might see. In a gentle tone, he said, I'm willing to give you all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. You are worth it. Chioma felt a tear escape and roll down her cheek. Steve caught it with his thumb, wiping it away. Without much thought, he leaned in and kissed her cheek, where the tear had been. The gestures were so tender that it melted away a chunk of Chioma's fears. In response, she did something brave. She turned and lightly kissed him on the lips. It was quick and soft, but enough to send her heart soaring. Steve looked pleasantly surprised, then happy. I'm new to this, Chioma whispered, smiling through her tears, but I want to see where this goes to. Steve beamed and took both her hands in his. You just made me the happiest man tonight, Chioma. They sat there together, heads close, holding hands for a long moment. The restaurant around them faded from their attention. In that moment, Chioma felt truly cherished. The girl who once believed she would never be loved now had someone who not only loved her for who she was, but admired her strength and intellect. From that night on, Choma and Steve were officially a couple. The news brought immense joy to Choma's parents when she eventually told them. Her mother cried happy tears on the phone, saying, I have prayed for this day, my daughter. You see, God's time is the best. This man loves you for you. Her father, a man of few words, simply said, he must be a good man. I look forward to meeting him. Ada practically jumped up and down with excitement when she found out. She insisted that Chioma tell her every detail of how Steve asked her to be more than a friend. All the while, Chioma's business was also flourishing. The contacts made through Steve had turned into solid clients. Within 6 months, Chitech Solutions had grown from just Chioma and Ada to a small team of 5 people, including a junior developer and 2 support staff. They moved from the tiny office to a slightly bigger space down the road that could fit all of them. Chioma juggled running her expanding business with nurturing her relationship with Steve. It was a busy but happiest period of her life. No good story is without its challenges. However, as Chioma's life improved, there were still hurdles to overcome. One challenge came in the form of social pressure and gossip. When word spread back in her home village that Chioma had a successful business and a wealthy fiance, some of those who once mocked her began to talk again. One weekend, Chioma and Steve visited her village to see her parents and officially introduce him to her family. It was a joyous occasion in her household. Her parents welcomed Steve warmly, serving him his favorite Igbo dishes that Chioma had told them about. Some extended relatives and neighbors were invited to a small gathering to meet the groom-to-be. As Chioma and Steve walked around greeting people, she could hear whispers. That's Chioma and her rich fiancé. Who would have imagined? Chioma, that tall-bearded girl, found such a handsome man. Some of the villagers spoke as if it were a miracle or a stroke of luck beyond belief. One of the women who had mocked her at the market years ago even came up to Chioma and gushed insincerely. Chioma, we are so proud of you. Oh. You have done well for yourself. And this your husband to be. He is a fine man and rich too. You are very, very lucky. The words sounded friendly, but Chioma could tell the woman didn't truly mean all of it. There was still a hint of surprise behind her tone. Chioma simply smiled politely and stayed by Steve's side. Inside, she felt a mix of emotions. She had moved past needing their approval, yet hearing those comments reminded her of her painful past. Steve, sensing something off, gently squeezed her hand and whispered, Ignore the gossip. They don't know you like I do. Chioma nodded, grateful for his understanding. His presence gave her strength. In a quiet moment, they slipped away from the crowd to take a short walk by the old playground where Chioma used to go as a child. The swings were still there, rusty but standing. That's where I used to sit alone when other kids didn't want to play with me. Chioma pointed out to Steve softly. Steve looked at the swing and then at her. Without a word, he walked over and gave the empty swing a gentle push, as if to dispel the sad memories attached to it. Then he put on an arm around Chioma's shoulder and said, Those days are gone. Now you have me and a lot of people who care about you. Chioma leaned into him. I know. Sometimes I can't believe how things have changed. Another challenge was more personal. As their wedding day drew near, Chioma confided in Steve. One night, after a fear that had been nagging her, they were sitting on a couch in her apartment, going over some wedding plans. Chioma was quieter than usual. Steve noticed. What's on your mind, love? He asked, brushing a hand over her arm. Chioma took a deep breath. Steve, do you ever worry about our future children? I mean, about how they will look or how people will treat them because of me. It was the first time she directly voiced a worry about children. She had a secret fear that maybe her unusual traits could pass on, or that society might judge her kids because of her. Steve turned towards her fully. Listen, he said seriously, I love you, and any children we have, I will love just as much. I don't care if they are tall or short. If our daughter has a faint bed at some age or not, they will be beautiful because they will be ours. He held her hands. And if anyone tries to tease them, we will teach our kids to be strong like their mother, and I will be there to protect them too. Choma felt tears of relief. I just wanted to be sure. Sometimes I worry. Steve hugged her tight. It's okay to worry, but know that I wouldn't want anyone else but you as the mother of my children. With that reassurance, Choma felt her anxieties ease. She realized yet again how fortunate she was to have Steve, someone who truly accepted every part of her. Their wedding was a beautiful ceremony in Owerri, held at a large church with creamy white walls and glass windows. Choma wore a lovely white gown that complemented her tall figure, and she decided not to heavily conceal the few small hairs that still tended to appear on her chin. She was radiant just as she was. Her bridesmaids included Aisha, who came down from the north to celebrate, and of course Ada, who was like a sister to her. Steve stood at the altar in a sharp suit, beaming with love and pride. When they said their vows, there was hardly a dry eye among the guests who knew their story. Choma's mother sobbed happily, and her father, though stoic, wiped a tear and later gave Steve a hug, welcoming him to the family. Even some villagers attended, out of curiosity, and because it was not every day someone from the village married in such a grand way. If they had expected to gossip, the sight of Choma and Steve's genuine love left them instead with a sense of awe. It was clear how happy the couple was and how much they adored each other. Not long after the wedding, life grew even fuller. Choma and Steve continued to thrive in their respective businesses. Chitech Solutions became a well-known provider of software in Imo State. Steve's Tech Vile expanded to two more cities. They often collaborated too. Steve would provide gadgets and hardware for clients that Chioma got on software, making for a fitting partnership in work as well as life. About a year into their marriage, Chioma became pregnant. It was an exciting time. Steve fussed over her, making sure she rested enough and ate well. Chioma balanced work with care for her health, eventually delegating more tasks at her company at her capable team as her belly grew. They decided to find out the baby's gender when the time came. At the clinic in Owerri, the doctor smiled and announced, "It looks like you're having a baby girl." Chioma and Steve shared a look of pure joy, a daughter. A few months later, late on a rainy night, when the city streets of Owerri gleamed with water under streetlights, Chioma gave birth to a healthy baby girl. They named her Amara, which means grace in Igbo. When the nurse placed Amara in Chioma's arms, tears rolled down Chioma's face as she counted the tiny fingers of her daughter. She had never seen anything so perfect. Steve gently kissed both his wife's and baby's forehead, overwhelmed with emotion. Amara had her father's bright eyes and a full head of soft hair. As months passed, she grew into a cheerful infant with a warm smile for everyone. Chioma often looked at her and marveled that this little one was hers. 2 years later, they had a second child, a boy named Kelechi, meaning thank God. With two children, their home was lively and sometimes chaotic, as any home would with young kids can be. There were nights of little sleep, days juggling work and childcare, but Chioma and Steve tackled it together as a team. Chioma realized that she had to balance everything in her life as best as she could. And that was exactly what she was doing. She was a wife, a mother, and a CEO of a growing tech company. It was not easy balancing all these roles. There were days she was exhausted from work meetings and then had to stay up late because Amara had a fever. There were times she missed a school event because of a business trip and felt guilty. But Steve was an equal partner. When Choma was busy, he would make dinner or take the kids out to play. If Steve had to travel for business, Choma managed things at home. They communicated and planned the week's schedules together to make sure the children were well cared for and their companies ran smoothly. One evening, after getting the kids to bed, Amara was 4 by now and Kelechi too. Choma sat on the couch with Steve, leaning on his shoulder. She was tired but content. The living room of their home glowed softly with warm lamps. It was a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood of Owerri, one they purchased after their second child was born. 2 stories with a small garden where the children had to play. They often had family time on weekends, taking the kids to the zoo or amusement park that had opened in town, or visiting Chioma's parents back in the village, who absolutely doted on their grandchildren and were delighted that the kids looked normal, as the villagers would say. As they relaxed, Chioma said quietly, "Sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming. Steve, I have to pinch myself." "Why?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Because this life, our home, our children, you, it's everything I ever wanted and more. I remember being a lonely girl, thinking this would never happen for me." Steve turned her face towards him gently. "You deserve every bit of this happiness. And it happened because you never gave up, Choma. You worked hard, you stayed kind, and you remained true to yourself. I'm just lucky I found you." Choma smiled, her eyes moist. "It still amazes me how you saw me from the very first day in the store, when I was just a stranger looking at laptops." He laughed softly. "Well, to be honest, I was struck by you. First, I noticed you because, yes, you are tall and unique looking, but then I saw how focused you were reading the specs, and I thought, here is someone who knows what she wants. And once we talked, I knew there was something special about you." They reminisced about that first meeting, about their journey since. Choma often thought about what lessons her story held. One quiet night, as she tucked in Amara, who had been asking for a bedtime story, she decided to tell a story version of her own story. Child friendly, of course. She told her daughter about a girl who was different and teased, but who worked hard and stayed kind, and eventually found happiness and proved everyone wrong about her. Amara listened with wide eyes, and at the end, she sleepily asked, "Mama, that story is about you, right?" Choma was surprised. "What makes you say that?" "Because you are strong and brave, just like the girl in the story. And you say she married a good man and has a girl and a boy. That's like us." Amara gave a little triumphant smile for figuring it out. Choma laughed softly and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Yes, it's about me. And I want you to remember, if anyone ever makes you feel bad for being different or for any reason, remember that you can do anything and that you are beautiful and loved always." "I will, Mama," Amara murmured as she closed her eyes to sleep. Choma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Her journey had come full circle in many ways. She had transformed her struggles into strength, and now she had the chance to pass on that strength and love to her children. One weekend, a community event was held back in Choma's home village to celebrate local success stories, to inspire the youth. The village leaders invited Choma to speak about her journey as a successful daughter of the soil, as they called it. Choma stood on the small stage in the village square, the same place where years ago she might have hurried by to avoid ridicule. Now, faces of young girls and boys looked up at her with admiration, their parents and elders listening attentively as she spoke. She told them about how she used to be lonely and teased, how she found comfort in studying and working hard. She spoke about never giving up and kindness, and how every person has something valuable inside them that others might not see at first. She didn't sugarcoat that it was painful to be mocked, but she emphasized that believing in herself and finding supportive people was key. Steve sat in the front row, holding little Kelechi, while Amara, now old enough to sit with her grandparents, watched her mother with pride. After the talk, many in the village came to shake Chioma's hand or hug her. Some of those who had mocked her even apologized. One of the boys, now a man, who had bullied her in school, approached and said, "Chioma, I am sorry for how I treated you back then. We were foolish. Congratulations on everything." Chioma, with a gracious smile, forgave him and replied, "Thank you. We were all young. I wish you well." The village had a small reception for her, and as she walked around with her family, she felt at peace. The wounds of the past had healed, and in that healing, she had become someone who could inspire others. That evening, back at their home in Owerri, Chioma and Steve sat outside on the balcony after putting the kids to bed. The stars were bright and the city's sounds were distant and calm at this hour. They talked about the day. You were wonderful out there today, Steve said, holding her hand. You might not realize it, but you probably changed some lives just by sharing your story. Choma looked at the stars. I hope so. If even one girl who feels out of place heard me and decided not to give up, I'll be happy. They sat in companionable silence for a while. Then Steve added with a chuckle, You know, maybe one day you should run for office or something. You're already a hometown hero. Choma laughed and shook her head. No, no politics for me. I am content with what I have. She turned to him. I truly am content, Steve. Thank you for being part of my journey. He gave her that same kind look that first made her heart flutter. Thank you for letting me be part of it. You have given me a family and a love I always wanted to. In the gentle night, they shared a kiss under the stars, grateful for each other and the roads that led them here. Choma's journey was not a fairy tale in the traditional sense. There were really struggles and tears along the way, but it was a story of triumph. A tall, strong girl, once mocked and isolated, had grown into a confident woman, a successful entrepreneur, a loving wife, and a mother. The things that once made her an outcast in the eyes of some became footnotes in a larger story of overcoming challenges and love. And as Choma looked ahead, she knew life would still have challenges, business ups and downs, kids to raise, new dreams to chase. But she would face them the same way she always did, with hard work, hope, and the support of those who loved her. In her heart, she whispered a thank you for how everything had balanced out in the end. She had love, she had a fulfilling career, and she had an inner peace. The girl who once walked with her head down to avoid stairs now walked with her head high, and that made all the difference. No matter how people see you or talk about you, your true worth is in your heart, your hard work, and your belief in yourself. Keep going, and the right people will see your light. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Choma on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with her journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.